What's going on, everybody? Doppler coming to you from the Gear Garage, episode number 27. I don't even know how 27 episodes have happened. Like, that's half a year. In any case, I'm so excited to have you here. And if you're watching on the replay, thanks for joining us. This is, I say this with every episode, but like, this is going to be one of my favorite episodes because I have one of my favorite people, one of my favorite cohorts in Tone Master Onius, Dumblicious, Mason Erroneous. Ladies and gentlemen, I got Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects here. We are having a moment because on this pedal board right in front of me, we've got like this amazing piece of gear. And it is basically a steel string singer in a box. Mason, what caused you to endeavor to to dare to have the cojones, the vision and the guts to actually go? I mean, it's one thing to kind of wake up one day and go, I'm going to do it. But it's another thing is like, I mean, if I said, I'm going to be the next Joe Satriani, and I posted that out there on YouTube, people would be like, the guy's gone daft. So, to go out into the world and say, I'm going to make a steel string singer in a box, there are those who had gone, Mason has lost a marble or two. How do you negotiate that reality with the fact that you've got this amazing box and it's part of a line of other amazing boxes? Let's start there.
Well, I think there are people that probably say that. So I think that there is that contingency. But for me, what all of our Dumble pedals, or Dumble inspired pedals have been about is really giving access. Because presumably anybody who is considering getting a Dumble, it's out of most of our reaches, and unless we want to refinance our house and sink a bunch of money into an amplifier. And so my goal is really just to be able to get people closer to kind of the unattainable amplifier, and to the degree that we've had access to those amplifiers to kind of reference. And as time has gone on, I've sort of just honed and refined the circuit to be able to get what in my estimation is more closely resembling the amplifier. And so this iteration of it with the Steel String Supreme is really about how do we bring it even closer now that we've had Steel String MK1 and Steel String MK2 in the universe of guitar players. What did I miss, or what did I miss about the original interpretation that maybe needs to be tweaked, and then how can we improve upon it and be able to add these other features into the pedal? And so that's really was the jumping off point, is kind of taking the feedback that people had given us about the previous iterations of it. And we still have the Steel String NK2, which I totally stand behind, and is one channel of this pedal. But this is kind of like taking it even a step further for people that again want to use it direct, because that was something that is kind of a popular mode of transporting your pedal board and using your pedal board without any sort of amp at all. And how do we reach those people as well, and also make it completely usable for people that want to still use their tube amplifiers?
I love that. And by the way, first of all, Kevin Musso, and I hope I pronounced your last name right. I'm gonna let's see. Hold on, I should have him here on the chat here somewhere. See if I can bring Kevin in. Where is that lovely post? Once I find it, let's presume it. There we go. Look at this. Played mine for the first time this morning. I love it. Makes my Strat sound much sweeter and responsive. Buy this pedal. It's stellar. I would have to agree with him. So the unique thing that Mason and I share, first of all, we're in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a mutual friend who, for the sake of this conversation, I won't name, but he's a great and dear friend. And all I can say is the first time I went to his house, I left with a Dumble in tow. He was like, "Oh, you want to borrow my amp?" And that's the kind of guy I was kind of vetted, so I was a known entity. But it was literally the first time I met this amazing person. And a couple of months later, he loaned me Steel String Singer 001. and that lived here for a minute. The overdrive special lived here for several months, and I am painfully spoiled. So let me see if I can say this tactfully. Like any group of people that is a community around a piece of gear, there are lots of different personalities. And the thing that I love about the Dumble community is they've been really, really cool and kind of let me in, which I am thrilled and humbled because it's a very unique, eclectic group of people. But these amps are very special. And what I'm going to start off by saying is, Nate Mason, this thing really captures the vibe. And I just love that. And I'm just, the thing is that it is phenomenal. So let me stop yapping and let me actually just pull up a track here. Why don't we just do that? Does that sound like a good idea?
I want to hear it. This is the first time I'm seeing it.
Okay, there we go. Here we go. And action. Mason, you're a genius. Snap.
I thought you were going to end with the James Bond chord there.
So, the interesting thing is that, when I think, and most people think of the steel string singer, they think of Stevie Ray, they think of Eric Johnson, and they think of course, John Mayer. So the interesting thing is I kind of naturally gravitate with that sound, gravitate towards pulling out all my John Mayer stuff. But what started to happen was I was like, well, how do I play that lick a little differently so it's not just regurgitating the John Mayer? And that kind of descending thing where the strings are kind of going, that classic double harmonic thing that's happening as I'm kind of playing those kind of moving passages against the open strings. I was like, you know what? There are a bunch of people that are going to find their sound on this pedal. And that's really awesome. I would love to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I think for some people, hearing the word Dumble can almost be like an because it can be very restrictive to those that we know who've used them, not realizing that there's actually quite a bit of variety of different Dumble amplifiers other than the overdrive special, which is typically what people think of when they hear the word Dumble. And this is sort of the antithesis of this. This is a single channel Dumble. It's clean only. And really what I think, if you remove the Dumble moniker from this and you just look at it objectively as a clean to low gain overdrive and really a tone shaping tool that can also give you this ability to go direct, and it's fully analog, I think the people that play it will either find one that it gives them a really really bouncy tubey tube amp type feel, even though it's analog and solid state, or if they're using it through their clean amp and they just want to be able to have an additional sort of alternative clean channel that maybe just enhances and helps them exaggerate the things that they like best about their amp, they can do without with it. Or if they want to use it as sort of like a two channel kind of preamp clean boost, because there are two independent channels, you can set them up differently. You can use it in the old fashioned kind of Dumble way where you set one as a tone stack bypass, and that's how his boost works. You can bypass the tone stack by removing the Supreme EQ, and then you can let through a bunch more levels so you can use that as a boost. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and that was really the intent, is that and I'm sure that even once this is in the field more, users will come up with alternative applications for this, which is something I'm excited to kind of see how other people interpret it, because I'm only stuck in the confines of the four corners of my brain as far as how I envision using it. But I'm really excited to see how other people are using it.
I already have the first request.
Okay,
make a foot switchable bypass for the EQs, so you can control that via some sort of switching rig.
got it.
Like that for me is, and you're gonna get that pretty much
Sure.
every day. Is like, is there any way you can make it so I can switch it on and off with my switcher? You'll be like, traditional channel switching. All right. So first of all, there's a bunch of great comments coming in. So everybody that's commenting, keep commenting. I want to take a moment. Go ahead, Mason.
No, I was just clearing my throat.
Oh,
I'll take a sip of
so
water.
I do want to take a moment and kind of say, okay, well, what is the Dumble sound? Like, this is kind of one of the things is Rhett Schull put out a video. Anything that Rhett does is great. But the other thing
Mhm.
is that kind of Mason, without, what I tried to say about the Dumble Club is that there are lots of different attendees who get a chance to be part of the club. Um, so without the kind of like the special version of that group, you and I have had the privilege of being able to spend a lot of time with these amplifiers. So I would like to say, kind of what it is that it does. Now, the neat thing is I'm set up here. I'm going to mute. Oh, wait, no, I'm going direct. And I have no signal because I've unplugged myself. There we go. So I'm going to turn this puppy off. So that is the Tone Master Deluxe Reverb. I'm using, I am actually technically going through the Dynacomp, but it's not on because I didn't get it powered. So I've got some Eric Johnson-esque demos to do, but I'm basically going out of this guy straight into the front end of the tone the new Oxblood, Gruel Cloth, blonde Tone Master, and then using the XLR out. I don't know whether it's the 421 or the 57. By the time we're working on a video in the background here, Mason and I, about this pedal, and so by the time we do all this, we will claim all the things that we're doing, such that everybody knows what it is. Basically, that was the pedal just into. Oh, sorry, that was bypassing. Now this is just the steel string side. Off. Now I'm going to play through kind of the dynamic range. Off. Just a little less special. Adding the EQ side. So the thing about this is kind of like I don't know if anybody's familiar with a Russian blue, but it's this particular type of cat. They are the most gorgeous cats in the world, but if you pet them just wrong, they just attack you. So the thing about this, there's a level of sensitivity like that in the number. So the funny thing is, there are I've heard a bunch of people who do not call that the number one position. I don't know what planet they're on, but that for me is number one because it's in the bridge. So the number 5 and the number 4 position. So the number 4 position, that. that little bit of snap is in there. If you're not hyper accurate, it's gonna be like cited for sloppy notes and unwanted open strings. But the beauty of that is when you listen to chords, I've untuned this thing, but I'll need to change guitars. But the point being is the spanking. Well, I can tune it. The spankiness of that, what it adds to the chords, and the jangle factor is just so special. So that is, in an essence, of what the Steel String Singer to me is really about. It's got this open high end, and honestly, there's an amp behind me that is a clone of the Jackson Browne Overdrive Special. And the clean channel of that amp is basically kind of what this dealio is, more or less. Like basically where Dumble started was with Fender amplifiers, that he was just a genius with circuits. So that is at the edge of my technical expertise, other than saying he started with Fender amplifiers. Mason, can you take it there? Pick up where I leave off.
Well, I mean, the thing that people, I think for the most part, people who are familiar with Dumble amps know this, but they were really highly customized amplifiers. It was like a guy that you could go to and you could say, this is the type of player that I am, and in a lot of cases, you'd have to even audition for him, or if you were remote, you'd have to send him an audition tape, and he would sort of evaluate what your playing was like, and then he would tell you what he could bring to the table. And then he would, kind of jump off from there. And a lot of them that I've seen, they do have Fender transformers, either from Showmans or Bandmasters or Twin Reverbs, things of that nature. And they're Fenders at their cores, but they have, overdrive channels on the overdrive specials. And then the Steel String Singer, there's a lot of different accounts of those two. I've seen Bruce Egnater write a long, kind of almost like a blog post where he said the one that he had worked on, before a gig that had broken down was an Ampeg, or an SVT. And so it was like it had like a giant bass transformer in it. And so I think that the moral of the story is there is a variable of different kind of things that are found, but really in like this pedal, what I was trying to hone in on is the X factor. It's like, well, what are the things that when we look at all these different Dumble models, and we did have quite a few of the Overdrive Special, which is a little bit different than this, but I definitely had a lot of experience with the person that will remain anonymous is Steel String Singer, and I also go to a lot of the John Mayer rehearsals, so I got to see his Steel String Singer up close and his two rocks, kind of see how he's setting them, and kind of, although I didn't get to play them myself, get to really sort of calibrate like how much air is this really moving, what is it, how is this sort of shaping the overall tone, and how is this kind of like a bed to bring in other pedals, whether that's a tube screamer or other types of overdrives and things like that. And one of the most validating things so far in this pedal is I got a text message from David Ryan Harris, who's been the sideman for John Mayer for almost 20 years. And he said, the tone that you got in that video where, my friend Tim Marco is playing Vultures, it's like, that's the closest I've heard anybody ever get to that, to John's tone. And so to me, that was just like the absolute sort of mic drop moment clincher, to have the guy who's been, standing next to his amps for 20 years be like, that's the closest I've ever heard anybody get. So that was very validating.
I love that. I want to answer a couple of the questions that have come in the midst of all this. First of all, just hello to everybody. I'm not going to do a blog roll tonight saying hi to everybody, but I will. I want to just jump to some questions I got. David Marquette, I will say hi because we're representing East Bay here. Just had to throw that in. If you're from the East Bay, we will give you a little extra love, just considering. But hello, everybody. Actually, no, you know what? Let me not be a hard ass. G-Man, what's up? Tom Atkins, what's up? Chris Stark, hey. Doug Doppler, wait, I'm him. Kevin Musso, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Chris Alexander, and if I do repeats, oh my word. David Marquette, Chris Alexander, Gabby Bergman, what's going on? Gabby. And Chris Ann Goyam, what's happening? Good vibes in your path from Santiago, Chile.
Wow.
Virtual fist bump to Chile. Welcome, my friend. Bienvenidos, mi amigo. Con mucho gusto. Tommy Bronski or Tommy Bronski, welcome. Mason, I know that guy. All right, let's pull this in real quick. My experience was at home in the studio, SSS, last in the chain into my Rev 20. Strymon Flint in the effects loop. I could not put my guitar down. So, there's another comment in here. There we go. Oh, it's the next one. Hey, Mark, what's going on? So, have I tried the Dumble model in the Axe effects that I have in my rack? So, the answer is no. Actually, the funny thing is when I read that kind of in scanning through the stuff there, hello, puppy dog. Good boy. Good dog. Oh, yeah.
See, come on.
What's funny is I was watching a webinar training, with a bunch of these YouTube influencers, and the one guy, he's a $bazillion a day guy, and this dog wanders in and is barking. He says, only now. So the thing is that I have not had a chance to try a bunch of the other flavors of this, and it's an interesting thing because the Dumble sound, as we described and all of that, is now attainable in a lot of different form factors. And that is really exciting. HW is my buddy from over at Tone Junkie Monkey. So we're going to be spending some time hanging out. And I'm just so privileged to know a bunch of these guys like Mason, who I've known for like a decade. So, the neat thing is I get a chance to kind of check out all the different flavors of it. So I have not had a chance to try the one in the Axe effects. I've not tried any of the Kemper ones. But I have spent a bunch of time today being appropriately chastised by this box, in the good sense of the word. Like, it's a little bit like a tweed, in that a tweed makes you walk the line. Like, once you kind of figure out, again, it's all that sparkly stuff. Every little pick sound, every little it hears all of that. So you're kind of having to attempt to be floaty and loosey while it's like got you by the cojones going, you have this much room to be inaccurate. But when you find that, and that's what makes you appreciate a guy like John Mayer so much, because he's so loosey-goosey, like right up on the train track, just cruising along in time. You would never guess that it actually takes this sight, like a gun, like a sight on a gun, where you just have to put it in range and in focus and go, there it is. And then you have to, then in the midst of all of that weirdness, you then have to kind of make it loose at the same time. And so the neat thing is that it took me a couple of hours today. I spent a bunch of time playing it yesterday, a bunch of time playing it today. But once you kind of begin to find that little pocket, the neat thing is again, kind of that little jangly thing. When I'm playing that quiet, listen to that. You can literally hear the fret from to. That's nuts. Great job. And, it's, yeah. All right. So hang on. Focus. All right. Good. I can do that. Phil Traina, what up, dude?
There he is.
Phil and that, not
Phil
anymore. I
was
just
the
took him
guy
off.
that, he introduced us.
That is
Phil was the one
correct.
that introduced us.
The no, the gear concierge. My bad. Bruce
Yeah.
Adolph. Good question about the Dumble sound. Bent Tom. Okay, good. Really, ramble on Rose video. I think that's got to be talking to you, Mason,
I
because
think there. I think that was a video that Gabriel Bergman had done.
that's
I think
awesome.
he was giving him a shout out. Another guy in the comments.
No, that's great. Awesome. All right, good. All right, good. All right, this is a great. Sorry, I missed one. I'm just a little too excited tonight. What can I say? Can I play a humbucker through it? Absolutely. So, the one thing that I haven't gotten a chance to do is grab my Les Paul. So I'm going to do that. I also have a Tele Custom that obviously has some humbuckers in it, but that guitar is kind of cheating because it sounds great through anything. So I have to say, chances are, if you've got a mediocre sounding guitar, you're gonna have to work a little harder. Mason, would you say that's true?
I think it just depends on how comfortable you are at turning knobs and kind of knowing where your sweet spot is. Because a lot of us, when we go to a store, we kind of turn everything to noon, and if we don't have kind of some semblance of a baseline that we're familiar with, sometimes it can be harder for us to kind of establish where it is that we like. And so basically, I'd say that like the cheat to the steel string, um, is really about adjusting the input gain versus the output gain. So if you have a high output humbucker, for example, you would want to bring down. I'll just show you because I have one. I have one here.
And I'm switching guitars while I've got you soloed there. See if I can do this without
Yeah.
breaking anything.
So like on the pedal, I'm gonna set them all to
Hey, I tell you
noon
what,
here.
Mason.
Yes, sir.
Before we do that, what I can do is I can be your demo guy, and
Sure.
you could tell me what to do. And we can give an audio side of that. So can you just
Sure.
give the short version, and then I can be your fingers if you're good with that?
Sure. So if you're looking at the pedal, and we'll give you a visual of this momentarily, but what I would do is I would actually decrease the output of the Supreme side, and I would increase the level on the steel string side. Because you're already going to have so much level that's going to be hitting the input of the pedal, you can back off some of the steel string, or you can increase the steel string side and back off some of the EQ side. So then that way you're letting the humbucker kind of set the input gain or dictate the input gain, and I think that would be the best way to do it. And so that's kind of my recommendation on this sort of stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I know Doug's grabbing his guitar, but I wonder if my telly's kind of, there he is.
All right, almost wired for sound. I got to put my my choke collar back on. I got to tell you, I was on a call with somebody talking about in-ears, and they were just going off about how much they hate them. They're just like they really went off. I'm just like, all right. So let's see here. All right, Mason. Yeah, this is kind of exciting. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. I've got to adjust this little guy here. Go ahead and talk for me, would you, Mason?
Sure, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, so let me switch into the top down mode. Oh, this is going to be kind of fun. All right, Mason, let's see. Let me zoom in a little bit more. All right. And pedals crooked for the anal retentive. How's that? All right. Ooh, that's the bridge pickup, baby. All right, so Mason, tell me what to do.
Yeah, so if I were gonna start with a humbucking pickup, the first thing I'd do is I'd back down the fat a little bit because you don't need a lot of the bigness because your humbucker is going to be fatter naturally. The other thing I would do is, because it's darker, I'd put the bright switch in the up position, and I'd put it on rock as well. Next thing I would do is I would increase the filter so you get a little bit more topped on it. So I'd go kind of, yep. And then what I do is I decrease the output section of the Supreme. So top left knob. Yep. And decrease that maybe a little more. And then increase the level knob below it. All the way to the left, bottom left. Yep. I'd try something like that.
Ooh, dang! You got gifts there, dude.
And if you feel like it's not enough gain, you could add more gain on the steel string side, or you can start to bring in more fat and kind of just see what you want out of it. Do you want it to be a little bit more drivey? Do you want it to be more of just a clean tone shaper that's not hitting your preamp any harder? These are all kind of things you could do.
All right, so if we want to hit the preamp harder, would you have me start with the
Yes. Yeah, so what I'd do is I'd actually reverse the positions of level and output. Swap them.
I'm going to take the filter back a little bit. I'm a little hot on input there, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually move over to jazz for a sec.
Okay. And you can take off the bright too. You can see what happens if you go to neutral in the middle.
Oh, got it. Yep. So what we're obviously trying to dial out, this just got a little tiny bit raspy. But honestly, I will blame that.
You can also increase the fat, and so the fat is going to get rid of some of the pop as well.
Give me that fatty. All right, Mason, what does the clean? Is that a blend?
Yeah, so it's a parallel blend of the EQ, the newly EQ'd signal. So basically, it's a blend of the top 3 knobs in toggles with the bottom 3.
So this is more it's
going to be more on the steel string side, and then as you bring it in, it's putting more of the EQ blend in parallel.
Okay, so I could bring the gain up and go like that. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's sweet. I'm going to bring the tone control back a little bit on the bridge pickup. Hang on. And to tell you the truth, somebody asked about, so actually I think that question was up a second ago. I'm going to bring that in. So I am just using the stock cabinet right now. I should say the stock IR that is in the Tone Master Deluxe, which is, I don't know what speaker is, but it's either a 421 or a 57. And so I would swap that out probably for something else, simply because for the clean sound, it's really good. But for this thing, it's getting a little tiny bit raspy, and I don't think that's actually the pedal. Mason?
No, it's not the pedal, and you can certainly dial out any sort of raspiness that you want. I think it depends too on, if you're going back and forth between your two sounds, over the course of an evening, there's a couple of different ways that you could do it. You could, obviously compensate at the amp end, but I mean, I don't know. I can put it through. I mean, I'm just curious what it would do. I have my Fender Concert, and then it's going into a cab M. So I have the load, and then it's going into the cab M with the pedal on my pedal board. So I mean, I can show you that, and we can see if we can what it sounds like. Different amp.
I would love to do that. And I'm gonna goose the game, but again, when I turn this to the left here, that's blending towards the EQ, away from the steel string, correct?
Yes, correct.
So when you're not digging in, hang on, let me add myself back into the picture here. All right, so when you're not digging in, and I have the gain way to flip up, so I'm going to back it off now. I'm going to bring the input there down. All right, there we go. All right, so I bet I can bring the input down, but bring the gain up. All right, hang on. Sorry, let me bring this camera back in for just a quick second, show you what I did. So basically what I did is I decided, hey, if I bring the input, well, that's the output, but that's the input. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's feeding series from the top half to the bottom half, correct?
Right. So the output of the top is feeding the steel string circuit.
Okay, so if I bring that down, I can then bring the gain up, and then I can then work on the blend here, and I can, in theory, and again, it's not really designed to be a high gain. Now, the interesting thing is what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a tone. Here's the thing, is that, well, hello, Mason. All of these sounds, the biggest mistake guitar players make is they're like a freight train. They bring their right hand, and it's the same right hand everywhere they go, and they just play the same volume no matter what they're playing through, and they're like, oh, that sucks, that's bad, versus like... And all of a sudden, I could play. I could sit there for. Well, you can see with me. The tell is when I start kind of rocking, like doing that thing. I'm in the spot. Mason, take it away, champ.
Well, I was going to show you. So I have a humbucking, DGT here, and this is kind of what I have going on. So I've set, the basically the similar to the way that you have it.
Actually, the funny thing is lift that up again.
Sure.
You want to see what's really hilarious? Hold on, let me add this back in. Let's see if I can do that. Take a look at where you've got. No, bring that up for just a quick sec. Take a look at where you've got it set and where I've got it set. We're so close. That's totally hilarious.
So I'm going through a Fender concert, like a Paul Revere era one. I'm gonna mute this mic just so we don't get any bleed through. But
awesome.
Just kind of see where we go. Certainly dirtier, but let me just turn down the gain a little bit on my amp here. Let's try that one more time.
Let's do that.
I should probably tune here before I do that again.
The tuning, I only play online as soon as the guitar has gone out of tune. Like, it's just so funny because you were in tune before, but it slipped. It just it was fine, but whatever it did just kind of went somewhere. All right, so the cabinet thing, while you're tuning, I do want to talk about the cab thing. So the deal is, I've got I played through a bunch of these amps. Uh, Mason Henry Kaiser, he liked the D120s. Is that correct?
Yeah, the JBLs.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, he's a JBL guy.
So the amp that I've got, that's basically a clone of the Jackson Brown amp, has got an EVM 12. I think it's an S, which is, I know the EVM 12L,
Right, short.
what's that?
It's the short coil version instead of the long coil. That's what the L versus S stand for.
And the M is medium coil.
I don't know if there's an M. Is there any? I think they're all EVM,
12L
and
or
then
12S. Okay, got it, got it. So the thing is that the EVs. There's a group of people that use the EVs. Then Mason, you work with Robin Ford. Robin is a 65, right?
he's G1265 through and through.
And was that something that Dumble set him up with, or was it a speaker that he had already gravitated towards?
No, I think he was into this. What's going on here? Get your hedgehog. Get it.
What's going on, pup? So there are different amps, different players that the amps were crafted for, and different players gravitate towards certain speakers. Like
Sure.
there are people that are vintage 30 guys, right? So do you, in your knowledge and understanding of this, because Mason's actually had his hands on way more of these amps than I have. Uh, to his credit, and to my, I'm happy for you. Uh, but were the speakers more of an indication of kind of like that was what the player gravitated, or was it kind of Dumble kind of going, I think this is the right voicing for this?
I only know from the stories that like Robin had told me, and for a long time in the beginning of his career, when you see Robin Ford, he's got a Dumble and he's just sticking it on top of a Marshall 412 cabinet, you know, and I think some of that was because they were very available and that he could get those backline quite easily when he went to Europe or whatever it was wherever it was that he was. And I think Dumble kind of convinced him that, that he was getting sort of an inferior speaker for what he was going for, either getting, greenbacks or vintage 30s or, whatever variety it was in a 412 Marshall cabinet of the time. And kind of turned him on to G1265s, and that they kind of have this really round and warm sound, and they have this low mid thing, and that it's complementary to what the head is designed for. And so that dictated, I think, for a lot of guys what they would use. And most of the Dumble sort of clone makers, they may use a G1265 or some sort of derivative of a G1265. It's kind of one of the cornerstones for any 212. And then for 112s, it's usually the EVM 12L. Because if it's a 100-watt amp, you presumably need something that can handle it. And that's one of the few speakers that you would see. I think there were some that had like Altex in them, but that was kind of more unusual. I think it was the standard speaker was usually the EVM 12L, and then if it was a 212, then it was typically the G1265, and I think that's what he would recommend to players.
And you like in the Cab M, the two rock one. Is that correct? The 212 two rock.
Yes, in the Cab M, they have a two rock. They have two different two rock impulse responses. Both are very good, and I can't remember which of the two I prefer, but I really think that one is excellent, and I can't remember whether it comes with the package or whether that's one that you need to purchase separately. I don't remember that part of it, but in any case, they're all super reasonable. Even if you need to buy one, it's a couple of bucks or something like that. So I think it's well worth it if you want that sound. And then also on Sweetwater's website for our demo video for this, I put up a free IR that you can download and put into whatever you want, whether that's a Cab M, which is what I like the best for the simulated cabinet sound when I'm using it in tandem. Again, that's what you were hearing, off of my amp, so that we don't have a speaker coming in. and it's convincing. It's great. You know, I think that you can really dial the sound in there.
Mason, now that that thing's in tune, just for the sake of conversation, I'd like to play the Eric Johnson Strat clip.
Yeah,
Uh,
play it.
okay, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of go down the humbucker road a little further. So
Okay.
this is my EJ Strat. For those of you, well, everybody knows this. That like, and the funny thing is, I asked Eric about is Steel String Singers. Like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have sold that. It was really cute. He was like, the head kind of went down, kind of shook. It was really cute. So, all right, hang on. Here we go. That jangle of the harmonics is kind of the classic thing. This little amp, there it is. This little amp behind me. The funny thing is it is the ugliest little amp in the world, but you know it sounds amazing. And that one's built on a twin chassis, and that jangly thing of the harmonics coming through is really kind of the thing. And there's no other amps that I've ever heard that really do that, even close. It's kind of one of the characteristic kind of like, oh, there's that thing. Mason, what you got for us?
Well, I'm wondering, is there a lot of bleed when I'm playing here when we're doing this?
Sounds bloody awesome to me.
And I got a little bit of collider for my reverb and delay there, by the way.
That is the Source Audio Collider for those who don't know. Great pedal, great company. Why did Mason? Quick question. Why the Collider?
Yeah, so I really like it because there's a couple reasons. One is that it has the reverb and delay in it, so you can kind of have the best. It's kind of like the greatest hits of their Ventress and of the Nemesis. So you get all those kind of like, again, greatest hits in one. The other thing I really like about it is if I ever do want to run wet dry, it has its own internal mixer, and so I don't need to involve a parallel mixer to be able to do the wet dry, and it can accept line or instrument level, and so it sort of solves a lot of problems in order to kind of create a real true 80s style wet dry wet system. You can do it very simply, and you can just have that effect and then run it into a cab simulator, whether that's the Cab M, or another one that I like for this is the GFI Cab Zeus, because it has a stereo input, and so you can just feed those right to your front of house or your DAW or whatever you have, and it sort of consolidates the signal path, so you don't need an external mixer or any of that stuff. You can just really get pretty close to what you would get in your studio setup, but with one pedal and a cab simulation.
I love it. All right,
Yeah.
in a moment we're going to answer some more questions, but you got that humbucker thing all dialed up. So what you got for us?
Yeah, so I actually didn't end up changing anything. I just kind of backed off the volume of my amp slightly, and just because I realized I was kind of clipping my input here, because I was playing that telly earlier, and so my output's way different. But I mean, you can see that we got quite a bit of clarity right now. Let me increase my.
We are getting some mic bleed, so we're getting a little combing
Let me
thing.
let me let me try this one more time without any mic bleed.
Oh, we still got a little tiny bit of clippage at the end, but that may have been me just kind of watching and not looking down on the level here. But yeah, that it's actually a nice thing that adds to the humbucker. That you got that, because you're not used to hearing. Do I have? Hang on a second. Let's see if I can get there. Kind of got a little bit of a 70s vibe kind of going on there for those of us that were old enough to remember the 70s. All right, let me pull in a couple of questions here. I like the 212 cabinets. There we go. All right. Questions. There's a good one. Mason, batteries, yay or nay? And you do have a battery packy thing, right?
Yes, but I think is that probably with respect to this guy is probably what I think he's talking about, right?
Correct,
It
Mundo.
doesn't take batteries.
And that is because you don't want the voltage sagging in the midst of it doing its thing, headroom?
No, it's just the circuit board is so replete. There was literally no room to have a battery in there. In other words, like I couldn't fit a battery like even between the two foot switches here. It just wouldn't fit.
No battery. All right. Again, to Mason, which what do you use in the cab am? All right, hey, Raphael, what's going on, my man? I'm going to be playing on this guy's record. Woohoo!
Nice.
Yeah, what's up, dude? Bienvenidos, amigo. All right, the G12 150. Now, 150 watts. Talk about clean headroom. Holy cow. Now, the interesting thing is the cabinets behind me, I actually, part of what my day was spent was loading those with the Celestian FR guys, whatever. Which in this moment I'm going to forget the call numbers of those, but the FX12 200 or whatever the heck they are, the F12 X200. Those are 200 watts, but they're kind of full range live response speakers. So I got to break those in, but I'm going to be doing some stuff with that, and that'll be really interesting to play this thing through some serious power and crank the daylights out of it. I think I'm going to have to do that. Paul, thank you very much. The EJ Strat was just a little tiny bit out of tune, but I'll have to replay that. But it got the idea across. All right. What's going on, Jonathan? Mason, were you playing with a pick?
No.
And
No, I rarely use them.
The interesting thing is, as I kind of started digging in, I started off with just the fingers, and then I kind of just grabbed a pick, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm at the pick now. But I did love the whole kind of. That's a pretty sound, dude. It's like, so to answer,
It sounds like you got it dialed better than I did, for a humbucker.
um,
The
uh,
one thing to remember though about the
you
steel
made
string
the you
singer,
made the box. You made the box. So
right?
I all I had to do was plug in and go, hey, and we ended up with the same settings. So you were saying,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah. So I think though that that the thing that we have to remember too about the steel string singer, if you think of all of its most well-known players, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Johnson, John Mayer, those guys all have in common that they play single coils and strats. So I think that there is a certain thing that lends itself to however that amp was designed. And again, I'm not saying that we're making a one-to-one copy of a steel string. What I'm saying is we're making as exact of a sonic replica as we can make with the parts that are available to us to be able to do that. Because I don't really believe that you can get uh, I don't believe that you can encompass the tone of an amp and a pedal by backwards mapping the schematic and using FETs or even tubes for that matter to be able to recreate it in a pedal. I've played that game before, and I think that there's some major shortcomings just because of the voltages that we have to work with on pedals. It's a huge barrier for people to have to deal with 24 or 36 volts or stuff that would have even any semblance of what they would see in an amplifier where you're competing with hundreds of volts, on the tubes. And there's a lot of things that we can't do at low voltage to be able to replicate that. And so I've really found that getting a resemblance to the original amp doesn't necessarily require or dictate as a prerequisite that you're using tubes or FETs or even trying to go for the amp. And so I think there's some people sometimes when they, either disassemble my pedals or whatever, they go, "Well, it's not a Dumble in there. This is a lie." And it's not. It's not a Dumble. If you take this thing apart, you're going to see an amalgamation of a lot of different circuits that went into this. That end result is when we compare it side by side of the amp, this is the feel. This is the sound. This is the range of tweakability that it has that we've expanded, knowing that again, you're going to be putting this into the front of another amp or direct, and this is the other thing we don't think about when we say, well, why don't we just rebuild the pedal just like the amp? Well, if you feed it into the amp, a steel string singer didn't have a preamp section feeding a preamp section feeding a power amp section. It was just their preamp section and their power amp section that was internal to the pedal. And so when you're doubling it up already, you've gotten away from what it does. So trying to do that, my conclusion is in trying to do that, it's sort of a frivolous task because you're moving yourself further away from the amp when you try to do that, because nobody is going to be stacking two preamps, like full tube preamps in series to get the sound of the amp that was just one preamp section and one power amp section. If you get my drift.
I totally do. And the interesting thing is, again, because both you and I have spent time with the unaforementioned persons with both
Right.
those two amps, the overdrive special and the steel string, you know, um, you know, my guess is that if you put the two of these side by side, you could get pretty darn close. But the goal is to actually just get the vibe,
Yeah.
because that amp sold for how many? $250,000.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually still listed.
I still have a chance.
Tim, Tim's guitars. Yeah. So talk to Miss Doppler, and you guys will.
Chairwoman of the board. So
Yeah.
I just have to share this with everybody because the last time Mason and I hung out, I was like, oh, it's probably 100, 150. He's like, nah. And so, that amp, I'm so, I've had just an amazing fortune with gear and, getting to know so many people that kind of open their door to me and like send me stuff and I get a chance to be part of their universe. It's a lot of fun, and the whole point about the Gear Garage is you get a chance to come along. So it's never like, oh, I have got the new pedal. It's like, screw that, and screw that vibe because I just want like let's hang out and talk about gear. And the idea is like, hopefully you'll get something. I was like, cool, that was a vibe, and it's kind of like the best way I could describe it without the high gain thing is if an AC30 and a Fender and a little bit of a Marshall had a love child. It's a little bit of that because it's kind of like all the things that you love about those amps, and somehow Dumble managed to kind of get them to all come together. It's just a magical thing, and then the thing that happens with the harmonics is just nuts. All right, so what was the name of the amp Dumble? What's the history to the name? So, uh, the short version is here is said amplifier that we're talking about. By the way, so that is a flipping huge amplifier. Mason, how big is that chassis?
I mean, it won't fit on most 412s. Even that particular one is so huge. You know, it's. I'm trying to think like it's bigger. It's bigger than my early 70s Marshall Plexi 100 watt, like big box head. I mean, it's huge. It's a bigger cabinet than that.
I have to say this just because I got to share it, and there's no better time to share this because I don't get a chance to share it. It was literally like this big, and I'm coming up my front stairs, cradling it like a proud father to just come home with their newborn child from the hospital. And the look on my face, it was pure elation because I knew I was going to get a chance. It was just one of those things. So the neat thing, I actually, again, I'm going to reiterate, the great thing about this, I think, first of all, for the salt, for the humbuckers, that's a flipping skin on my finger, dude. Can you hear that, Mason?
I can hear it. What does it sound like if you turn it off right now?
Oh, I may be getting a little bleed.
No, I'm saying what happens if you turn off the pedal?
Oh, thank you. Sounds like my skin. Let me turn it back on. It's like the best channel strip and a little bit of compression you ever played through, right? And again, the whole vibe for me, and just for piss and giggle, I'm not just sitting here noodling like an idiot, although maybe I am. But the whole point is that when you just keep playing, like who was it that said, "Hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on." My new buddy who I just met today. At least I think I just met Kevin today. Kevin, if I've met you previously, I just stuffed my foot in a serious way. But so Kevin was talking about he basically all he did was he sit there and he basically played all day. Spent a bunch of
Yeah.
time playing it. That's the whole goal. That is, I don't care what you're playing through. I don't care if it's a new DS1 through a tin can. If you sit there and you play and you get off on it, that's it. And it doesn't matter how much you spend, right, Mason?
I think that's the name of the game. You want to inspire people, and again for us, as I said in the beginning, the idea with any of the Dumble style effects is really about trying to give people access. Most people will not get to play one of these in their lifetime, and to me, it felt like a wasted opportunity to, you know, presuming that the owner of these amps was okay with us doing this, which thankfully he was. That this now allows a contingency of people to be able to have access to it. And I think that there's different interpretations, depending on whether you're, a Dumble amp builder or things like that, where maybe they don't like that. But I think the bottom line that I've always tried to say is, like a good clone of a Dumble amplifier is certainly going to be better than the pedal. But those also come at a premium, and I think people's habits now for buying gear is less amp centric. Although you wouldn't know it from looking at Doug's wall, uh,
That's the
and
small side of the room.
yeah, and people are really buying, pedals, to amps 10 to 1, 15 to 1. And so the degree to which we can really encompass that sound and doesn't require you to buy a clone, like that's kind of the goal. And that's not to dissuade people to buy a clone amp, because there's a lot of great builders, whether it's Two Rock or Welligen or Fuchs, or I mean, there's just
Sebago
there
Sound, Bill Dunham.
Sebago. There are so many different ones out there, and you really, and I think that the best one, honestly, for the money, which I think goes under a lot of people's radar, is the Seriatone stuff. I think it's really really good, and super underrated, and you can get them for less money than most reissue Fender amps, that are of the same wattage, 50 to 100 watts.
I haven't played any of those. All right, now you've piqued my interest. Well, the neat thing is I did a couple of videos for Bill Dunham and Sebago Sound, and I've still got one of those amps here. I love that. I used it on a bunch of. I used it on a number of the tracks on a video I got hired to do for Gretsch, and it's
Yeah.
like if I'm crafty, Mason, do you mind if I pull up that video if I can kind of get a hold of it easily? Is that going to be a
Yes, please. Be my
okay? Give
guest.
me a minute. So do me a favor, Mason, entertain us with your wit and and endeavorosity. Tell us the coolest, funny. Okay, hang on, wait a second. Of course, it's $250,000. It's covered in crushed velvet. Chris, I love you, bro. That's
I
why if it wasn't the velvet, a pure just 200K, but the extra 50K is for the original velvet. It's kind of like if you get the guitar, and this isn't the original finish, but if you got the original finish. Hey, by the way, Mason, is that your ES?
what? Which
The
one?
red ES that those guys
Oh
are playing
yeah,
in
yeah,
the demos?
yeah, yeah. It's a 68. Not a desirable year though for those. That's why they can be had affordably.
Well, the interesting thing is I'm like I really need an ES. I didn't have the decency. No, I had the decency not to text you today. It's like, hey, dude, can I borrow your 60? All right. So Michael, or Mikhail or Michal, great show. Thank you so much. Congrats to Mason for pulling the steel string supreme. I just can't wait to get it in my hands. Bravo. With pleasure. I have
Yes.
had a crap ton of fun with this, but it probably shows. So there. Uh, all right. Seems appropriate to mention. Sad to have $100,000 amps and $5. Tom, I have heard you play, and I don't believe that for a minute. You have spent plenty of time massaging I had that was one of the happy birthday videos. So Tom and Chris Stark have kind of massaged these videos for Andy Timmons and Joe Satriani. Joe Satriani shared it on his Facebook. Joe was so enamored with the whole thing. So I'm not buying that, but it's a very cute idea. I appreciate the humility. There we go. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you. Uh, what's going on, Rick? How you doing, my man? All right. So, what the heck was it that I was gonna do? That I was
You were
gonna
looking for a
the
demo
Gretsch
that you
clip. You
did.
got it. All right, Mason. Hold down the fort, would you?
Sure.
Tell us a Dumble
Well,
story. The
a
coolest
Dumble
Dumble story ever. Like, ever.
coolest Dumble story. Um, let's see. What's a good one? I think that this is sort of not directly related to Dumble, but I think it's a cool sort of lore thing that kind of got me into the Dumble thing. Which is, I used to take guitar lessons at a place called Zone Music in Cotati, California. And at Zone Music, they had a, 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 a grouping of sort of small little studios that they would rent out to musicians and that they'd rent out to sort of repairmen of different types of instruments and amplifiers and things like that. And the guitar teacher that I had at the time, his name was Chris Pimentel, and Chris had his little studio. And these are like little like 200 square foot, sliding glass door studios with just like two polytone amps in there, for teaching. And the place right next door was from Bill Crenard, or Bill Crenard's repair shop. This is before Two Rock was even a thing. He had a little kind of like 200 or 300 square foot little area where he would repair hi-fi gear, and I'd be waiting outside for my lesson on a bench, and Bill would always have his sliding glass door open. He'd be working on stuff, and I'd like go and ask him questions and bother him about stuff. And I got to know Bill. I probably met him when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, and then Two Rock kind of developed, and John Mayer got into the fold, and I remember Bill was the guy that told me all about Dumble amplifiers, and I remember the first Two Rock that I played that was emulating a Dumble, sort of a blend of what they did and what Dumble did, was an Emerald Pro. And I just remember that at the time I had a deluxe reverb, and I couldn't understand all the knobs on the Emerald Pro because there's like way more knobs than what I had on the Fender, and then there was these toggle switches that I didn't really know what any of it did. But that kind of began sort of me being enamored with the Dumble sound, and Bill was really responsible for kind of putting me on the warpath, so to speak, when it comes to trying to attain Dumble sounds and amplifiers and such.
I love it. All right, let me pull up that Sebago sound. Let me see if I can get all the video stuff to be all pretty. There we go. And can I zoom in on that puppy? I can. Look at that. Good stuff there. All right. All right. Can I get that a little more? Come on. Wrong way. Okay, there we go. Hey, hey, hey. All right. Here we go. No, hang on. You got to turn the volume up, Doppler. You know what? That's not the Sebago sound. That's something else. Hang on.
Jazz choruses, stereo
Yeah,
jazz
no, that's.
chorus.
I'm like, wait a second. That's not the. It's the wrong amp, moron. Hold on. All right, here we go. Oh, this is me playing slide. This is a joke. Somebody's gonna get a kick out of this. Here we go. Now, the interesting thing about that, all right, let's get out of here. Let's get over there, is that the amp that I've got here is basically a clone of the running on empty thing. And I don't pretend to sound anything like David Lindley did on running on empty. But, when I was, yeah, thanks, Chris, no audio. um, Chris, do me a favor. Did the audio of the clip, can you do me a favor? Once I figured it out and turned the volume up, was that going through? Not hearing audio from YouTube. All right, great. Mason, you were hearing it, but nobody else was. Okay.
I didn't hear it either. I didn't hear it either on my end.
I am fired. And your pay is docked, Doppler. Sorry about that, folks. That must have been very entertaining. Hold on. Let's do it again. All right. So, all right. Sorry about that, folks. Dang it. So the thing about that slide thing is that, I was in like 7th grade when Running on Empty came out. And that song was on the radio 24 hours a day. And just like, and I didn't know that, I just figured it was kind of a traditional electric guitar player playing slide. I didn't know it was a lap steel.
Yeah.
But that sound and the way he did the vibrato, the funny thing is, if you listen to that track, as I was listening to it the other day, is it's really got this whole, thank you, Chris. Hold on a second. I absolutely adore Chris Stark, just so everybody knows. That's so funny. That's great. So in any case, you know, the way that amp sounds is very unique, and you know, so it's so funny. There are all these kind of classic Dumble flavors. I got a Dumble story to tell. So I have not yet
Okay.
met Dumble. Operative word being yet, but I was teaching at. Hey, Chris Stark, were you at Vi in Vale? Who on the thread here or in the chat was at the Vi show, the Vi Academy in Vale, whatever number Vi Academy that was. So after the camp, Steve played at this festival called Copper Mountain, and on that festival was Robin Ford. So
Hmm.
and the best, like I can't believe it moment ever until I actually am sitting in a John Mayer rehearsal, pinching myself, believing I must be dreaming. And I'll be sitting next to Mason. I'd be like, I must be dreaming. This cannot be reality. Oh, excellent. Hey, Tom, excellent. Hang on. Wait, oh, okay. This is going to be the other question. So, oh, there we go. 2.0. Thank you, Chris. There we go. My guys. There we go. All right. So, all right. We're going to come to this question here. So I'm they kind of rented us a space because I brought a bunch of Steve stuff out from California. Um, Actually, this is another story. I got to tell you, this is too funny. So it's I leave California. I don't know. It was a Thursday morning or Friday morning to get there in time for the next day to kind of have the gear there dropped off for a morning load in. And I'm in flippin' Colorado, and the GPS goes out because I'm in the middle of flipping nowhere. I have no cell service. The GPS is on my cell, and I've got all of Steve's gear in my van, and I'm driving in a minivan. The paved road turns into a dirt road, and I'm thinking
Hmm.
if I get a flat tire out in the middle of this, I may live until the morning, but I will not make it to the next sunrise because I will be killed. That I will not survive. You know, I can't even call. Like there's no option. So in any case, after that Vi Academy, we're at Copper Mountain, and so because I brought a bunch of Steve stuff, they rented me a room. It was lovely, and at like 9 in the morning, Robin starts his sound check because the festival supposed to start at about 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever it is, and all of a sudden I hear him step on the preamp boost, which for those who are not in the know, Mason mentioned it before, but basically what it does is it lifts most, but correct me if I'm wrong, but not all of the tone stack out of the circuit, and basically it's like kind of like the amp explodes with volume, and all this crazy. It's not distortion. If distortion and overdrive had a love child that was the sexiest lead guitar sound you've ever heard, like and I'm like, you know, the funny thing, I'm lying in bed, I'm like, that's Robin Ford, and that's the Dumble. Like, you know, I'm like, I am in guitar. I'm either dead, and this is the sound of heaven. This is great. Robin Ford is playing his Dumble in heaven. It starts at 9 a.m. You know, that's what heaven is. I'm like, this is great. Thank you so much. But no, it was actually real. And then it was just unreal to watch Robin sound check, and to hear him playing through that amp at, you know, the thing is, he's like 100 yards away, but he's playing straight down the corridor of where these buildings are, where you kind of walk in between the buildings. So it's this perfect funnel for the sound of that amplifier. It was unreal, just unreal. And you know, and then there's Robin's playing, which is, you
Yeah,
know,
he's magical.
oh no, wait. You guys met at Vale at Vile. I love it. That is a bromance. That's pretty hilarious. Okay, so let's get to this whole signal chain thing. Let me come back to that question real quick. Um, Rick, I'm going to answer your question offline. That's all I'm going to say about that. Where the okay, hang on a second. There we go. So this question I am going to answer in line. Is SSS referring to Stevie Ray Vaughan's Steel String Singer Custom doubles. So yes, so the interesting thing is, and we will have a small rabbit trail. There we go. So right above my thumb is what's called a vibroverb. And one of the reasons that the Steel String Singer, I think, had the appeal to Stevie Ray is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mason, but Steel String Singer started off as a lap steel amplifier, right? And pedal
Yeah,
steel.
I actually think I think he envisioned David Lindley would be the guy that would use it, and I think what ended up happening is, Jackson Brown had that one, or had a pedal steel high headroom. It could have been used for pedal steel. It could have been used for bass, um, and it was really clean. 200 or 150 watts or 200 watts. I can't remember the number, but that's what Stevie Ray ended up using on Let's Dance. Which is kind of the first time you really got to hear Stevie Ray in the context of the way that we know him now. Um, and So we kind of got reappropriated the whole idea of this really big, clean sort of steel string singer type amp. He used it on that, started using that as an amp on tour, and it was never really envisioned to be this thing that was for guitar players, but he sort of forced everybody's hand, and probably to the upset of Dumble. He's like, gosh, now I got to make all these pedal steel amps for guitar players, because Stevie Ray, everybody wants a Stevie Ray Vaughan has, or the people that he's willing to build for want to have a Stevie Ray Vaughan has.
Well, it's really interesting. Tim from oh, Milkman. He's a pedal steel player, so a lot of his amps are built with that kind of that circuit in mind, where it's got to be able to handle a pedal steel, which is one of my favorite instruments. But the interesting thing is the amps, arguably, that I'm most drawn to are these pedal steel amplifiers, which is kind of funny. Who'd have thunk it? Um, Maybe in my next in the recreation. I just love that, Chris. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, let's see here. There we go. This is a great question. So, Chris Alexander, where do you place it? So, the interesting thing is that I'm going to rabbit trail for a moment because I want Mason's opinion. Because one of the things I'm going to be doing tomorrow is I'm going to be recording a bunch of demos for a video I'm going to do on this. Um, and one of the things that I'm going to endeavor to do is use this pair of Tone Master Deluxe reverbs to do kind of an Eric Johnson clean kind of steel string singer kind of vibe. And so I whipped out the Dynacomp, and I will admit it is not a vintage Dynacomp, but it is a Dynacomp just the same. And then I went on to kind of like Pinterest, where you can kind of download the drawing of Eric's rig, which more often than not it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it. Well, if because normally I would put a drive pedal into my. Well, actually, it depends on what I'm doing, what vibe I'm going for. Actually, I correct myself. It's been a while since I used a compressor. Usually, when I'm using a compressor, it will be the first thing in my signal chain. So the idea is, and normally your compressor is going to go into your amplifier, quote unquote, anyway. So then, the interesting thing is that then there's the split with the TC, because the interesting thing is in the diagram, what it showed was Eric was using the TC to split at the amps, and that he was running the delays in mono before getting the TC, and which I guess makes sense, but you're not going to get stereo delay. So I'm kind of curious in the Eric Johnson version of the rig, which I'm going to be building tomorrow, that I may or may not pull out my Black Echo Plex for. Mason, to go for the Eric Johnson thing, what order would you play it if you had a pair of amps to work with?
Yeah, I think it's really the same whether you're running direct or not. I think you treat it as kind of the last of your sort of overdrive section, and then the cool thing about almost every single one of the cab simulations that I've seen out there, and this is kind of a consideration that we made when we made it, is almost all of them have level compensations. So you can go into them, anywhere from line to instrument, and some of the good ones even like pro line level, down to consumer to instrument level. And so there's not a lot of risk then at that point of putting your delays after it. Like it's not going to compromise the sound. And the good thing too about it is by doing that, you you get to have your whole entire signal path going into the cab simulation. And I like to put a splitter at the very last pedal, so I get the same signal to the amp if I want to go amped, or and I get the same signal going to the simulated cabinet. So I can have both at the same time if I want them, or if I want to use an amp one gig and I want to use the direct 1 gig. Or the other thing I like to do is I like to use the cab M for in-ear monitoring, because I want to always have a really consistent feed that I'm familiar with, so that if we're having a problem, I can diagnose that very easily because I'm always familiar with what my feed is when it's coming from my cab M, and I know what that's supposed to sound like. And so I always have a relativity baseline whenever I'm playing anywhere. And that could also go if I wasn't using in ears and I was using wedges. I know what that's supposed to sound like because that is not variable to the sound guy, like the miking position and things like that. And so I really like having that as a security blanket to make sure that like I can diagnose an issue on my rig, or whether this is a sound guy issue and we need to either adjust mic placement, or we need to adjust levels or EQs or whatever kind of stuff is going on. And bless their hearts, the sound guys I think work really hard, but I think there's a huge variable between sound guy 1 and sound guy 2, and what their background is. And if their background's theater and they're doing a guitar venue or whatever, you can get really different uh, skill sets.
And sound guys, if there's one instrument that they have a tendency to play, it's drums. And drummers have a tendency to mix the snare drum as the loudest instrument in the entire mix. They want to hear every nuance of every grace note. It's just one of those funny things that's just kind of like that. So the guitars are usually kind of an afterthought. It's it's just kind of a thing. All right, Michael, whose name I pronounced properly, has a question here.
Yeah,
Hang on, wait, hold on. Duh. All right, so let's talk signal chain.
yeah,
If you're running it, let's so the Eric Johnson thing. If somebody
yeah.
wanted to do the Eric Johnson thing, where would you place the TC? Where would you do your split for the TC? Would you run a stereo? Because as I was lying in bed thinking about this last night, as I was going to sleep, I was thinking, well, all right, sorry guys, we're going to rabbit trail for just a second. Okay, you got to understand, Mason and I are flipping gear fanatics. So I'm thinking, do I pull out the Strymon pedals? Do I pull out the Timeline and the Big Sky? Because I can get a great plate out of the Big Sky. I can get any delay I want out of the Timeline. I can run them in true stereo. I can get all the stereo separation I want. I can run a dual delay. So if I want to have them just slightly offset, or if I
Yeah.
want to have it such that they're basically running in series, because one of the drawings I saw, Eric was running the Deluxe Memory Man into a Boss DD2. And my
Yeah.
guess is that he was using one or the other sometimes, but my guess is he was running them in series to kind of create a reverb type of effect like you hear Joe Satriani using his delays. He purposely sets them such that they're kind of one is going into the other in series for a reverb type of a vibe. So Mason, lead the charge.
Yeah, so I think ordinarily if you had the amps, I would approach this differently. But because the pedal is designed to be able to run in front of an amp if you're actually running amps, I would put the compressor first, as you have it. And then I'd put my tube driver or tube screamer or fuzzes, therein. And he doesn't always put his fuzz first. Sometimes he will run a tube screamer into those fuzzes. Depending on what signal path that you check out of his. So it's not the he sometimes will disobey sort of the tried and true the tone 10 commandments. He will he'll sometimes not put his fuzz face first. But in any case, I would run all those before the steel string, and then after the steel string, I would run my subsequent delays. So whether that's a DD2 or a Memory Man or an Echoplex simulation, and then I would still have the chorus be the last thing doing the stereo split to the 2 amps. Because unless you were treating the steel string completely as an amp and you were going direct and you had two of them, I don't really think that there's going to be a huge advantage for you. And the other thing again is that we designed this to be able to run in front of a tube amp, and so we still can let the tube amps do their job. They're going to have the color of this pedal still running into them, but it's not going to be coloring the delay and the reverb. We're going to rely on the Fender amps that you have in the background to be doing that. And I think that that would be the way that I would approach it if I were building a rig that was supposed to incorporate this and sound like that.
I think it's also probable that I'm going to pull out one of the rev amps or both of the revs that I've got, simply
Yeah.
because it's a different vibe. And in case you guys haven't played through the revs, the Rev D20, well, I'm sorry, the rev amps, the D20 in particular, it's powered by a pair of 6v6s. So it's basically the actual tubes that are in a deluxe reverb, but it's got the two notes technology embedded. And the amazing thing about those amplifiers, why in this particular scenario it would be so great, is when you go out of the direct out, you're able to choose to incorporate the power amp in the direct out or not. You're also able to choose whether you're going to run the power amp at 4 or 20 watts.
Yeah.
And the gain, the push pull on the gain control adds this jangle that it's the only amp that I've ever seen that actually gets into this character area because of the jangle that's in there. They've done a fabulous job on those. So
Yeah.
that's great. All right. Um, and if you were running, let's just say I'm running a guitar into the Steel String Supreme, into a delay, into an amp, that's the way you would do it, right? Because you're getting a little bit of gain on the steel string, or at least have the option to do it. You would place your gain pedals before the steel string, then the steel string, and then your time based effects into a clean amplifier, or into the
Yeah.
loop,
or
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 DI.
or DI, and so that's what you're hearing here. Like what I was playing earlier, that's guitar through 10 effects pedals, and then into the 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 amplifier. But then I'm using the captor for this, and then doing a simulated cab. So we're hearing it into a Rivera era concert, but with just the simulated cabinet, and then the Captor X is doing the load.
I love it. All
Yeah.
right, Michael has a question. A question to Mason and his expertise. Mason, you can see that, right?
Yeah, and I've been following so basically, to summarize, because he's got a few series in this question, is basically about asking about an amp. His budget is between 1,000 and 1,500. He's thinking about a Milkman amp or a Tone King Gremlin. And this is what I tell a lot of people, and it is a very uncool answer, but and this is really being honest. You can get really cool vintage Fender amps for this price range. So a 65 to 68 Fender Bassman are well below that budget. A Bandmaster well below that budget. A Pro Reverb probably sort of at the edge of that budget. Um, Tremolux probably in that budget. Showman in that budget. Maybe a 70s deluxe reverb is in that budget. I mean, here's the thing with those old Fender amps, like they may be old, but they are the most serviceable amplifiers that you can possibly buy. Everybody can fix them. They're very simple. Like it's hard to find somebody that can screw them up. It's like a diner that can't make eggs. Like every diner is going to be able to make you scrambled eggs or over easy eggs. Like it's pretty hard to screw that up. And this is the thing I just say about those old Fenders is they're all hand wired. They sound incredible. They're easy to work on. They're easy to fix if something goes wrong. Almost none of it is on a PC board, and not that that's like the kiss of death or anything like that, but it just adds to its serviceability factor. And so I would just say, don't be afraid to check out, Blackface Bandmasters, Basemans, Tremolux, Showmans, Dual Showmans. I mean, these are all really good amps that take pedals great. Pro Reverb is a big sleeper. A lot of people sleep on
Okay,
those.
hold on. We're stopping there.
Okay.
The the best, most attainable, you got to find one. Everything that you want in a Fender amplifier It's not, twins can be a little strident.
Yeah.
Mason, you know what I'm talking about. That kind of that they were meant to be heard over the equivalent of what was an old school PA. Basically, it was meant to be flippin' loud. That
They're
was the
very
whole.
linear. They're very linear.
And so the thing is the pro reverb is like everything. I'm going to go to the analogy. If a deluxe reverb and a super reverb got together and had a love child, so everything that you love about a deluxe, but it's just a little limp. You know what I'm saying? It's just, if you know, like in a way, like you plug in a Plexi Marshall next to a deluxe reverb, you're just gonna blow that poor guy off the stage when you turn that Plexi Marshall off. And I love a deluxe reverb. I've got like one, two, three of them in the room. But there's something about them that's a little. They're just a little. It's actually the character of what makes the. It's the character of what makes a 6v6 really lovely. It's slightly petite, right? Mason, correct me if I'm wrong. There's kind of an intimacy about them, but you get up really loud, and they're 22 watts, so they're not meant to be loud. So the whole thing about the Pro Reverb, I think, is 40 watts,
Yeah, it's
and
40.
it's a last time as I recall, it's a pair of 12 inches. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
now
like a half-powered twin.
it sounds unflipping believable. And I will tell you, any of you guys that went to the G4 experience where Tommy Emmanuel sat in with Joe, and by the way, if you haven't seen Tommy Emmanuel play electric guitar, just saying. So Tommy has this old, like a 68 Telly, and they were like, hey, Doug, can you bring an amp for Tommy? And I'm like, it's my buddy Critter's amp. So it's like a 65 Pro Reverb. It's just it's got the original speakers in it. It's just the most ridiculous. The reverb is perfect. The volume is perfect. And I'm not taking the vibroverb anywhere. That amp doesn't leave. And, you know, I'm not taking it to a guitar camp. Nothing personal to my guitar camp brethren. But Tommy just plugged this thing in and he just went and never turned around to touch the amp again. It was smoking loud, keeping up with Joe Satriani, crushing it. And it was just like to hear somebody else crank that thing and play it. Oh, it was just heaven. Mason, do you own a Pro, or you know, kind of what's
Yeah,
your?
actually, one of the guys that was in the chat earlier, Gabriel Bergman, he has it. He's got it on loan at his place in L.A. So yeah, I do have one.
I mean, are you as enamored? I mean, I just kind of have gone like loopy over it, but I'm that crazed about that amplifier. It's that good in my opinion.
I think they're really excellent, and I think a lot of people don't know about them because usually people are going after the Princetons or the Deluxes more commonly, and they don't really know about this. And the thing to understand about Fenders is the preamp section on all of them of that era, the blackface era is almost all identical. The preamps are very similar. It's how much power do they have, whether they have reverb, because that's another tube, another gain stage, whether it has tremolo. Um, there's a lot of similarity between them, but man, and the cool thing too about the G or about the Pro Reverb is you can put some Celestion speakers in there, and I have G1265s in mind, kind of like what Dumble would do. Um, and that takes pedals amazingly well. It kind of helps compensate a little bit for the mid scoop on Fenders, which is usually kind of the complaint that a lot of people have, and it doesn't take it out of that mid scoop completely, but I think it just gives it a little bit more balance. And they sound incredible. I think that another guy who's really into them is Tomo Fujita, who is John Mayer's instructor at Berkeley, and I think that's a really really good amp. And I think that for Michael's question, I mean that's something that can be had. I see them on Craigslist here in the Bay Area, and we have a pretty good inventory just because Craigslist was sort of all founded in this area. But I find them routinely for 12 to 1500. So I think that if you got something like that, you can get it quiet enough because it's not too loud. If you wanted to kind of do more of a bedroom volume thing, it takes pedals incredibly well. And I love Two Rock, and I love a lot of these companies that are making steel string singers and stuff like that. But if we're talking about something that's half the power of a steel string, and most people will never ever be able to use the 100 watts of a steel string singer in their homes, this is a really great middle ground, and shares a lot of, I think, the the pivotal points that sort of make a great clean amp. And it's going to give you a lot of versatility. If you want to go the Dumble route, you get some Dumble style overdrives. You want to go the steel string route, you can get the steel string Singer, or steel string Supreme pedal from us, or get yourself some claw and stuff like that. I mean, you can really goose these up a lot of different ways, and they're very versatile. You throw a governor in front of it, and you got your kind of Gary Moore, Andy Timmons type sounds. I mean, they're really really great at with pedals, and I think with the speaker change too, they're even just more of a chameleon than any other amp that I know out there for the price. Where else can you get a hand wired amp now for $1,500? It's kind of amazing that vintage amps just haven't superseded. You can get an amp from 65 and find them all day long for $1,000. Good luck finding a Strat from the same era for less than 20.
I would just make sure that the chassis hasn't been drilled, and there's no kind of no master volume buggery that's happened over that, and ideally, if you can find it with the original speaker, that usually hints that that amp has not been abused too thoroughly, which means it's kind of generally speaking, if it's got the original era appropriate speaker, especially if you can do date codes, which I don't know how to do on the Fenders. I don't know how to do it on the Marshalls, other than I know that you can.
It's not hard, and if you're serious about when Michael, or anybody who's watching this, just send me an email. Like, ask the guy to pull the chassis, take pictures. If the guys won't do that, I mean, it's not always that they're trying to evade, but sometimes it's just because they don't feel comfortable opening up the chassis, or they don't know how. But to the degree that guys are willing to do that, get them to show you some pictures. Just you can kind of get a sense of whether the caps have been changed, or whether they've done any upgrades. And in little stuff is normal, on those. And even if a speaker isn't original or it's been recloned, that's pretty normal. These are you wouldn't find a car from that era with the same tires on it. So it's going to be understandable. There's going to be some things that are changed, but very little on that is catastrophic. I think the most catastrophic thing is if you don't have an original transformer. That can be a difficult one to overcome. I've had some Fender amps with non-original transformers, and depending on what transformer is, it's not so bad. But to the degree that you can do that and keep the transformers, if the iron's original, even if there's some holes drilled in and stuff like that, it's not the end of the world sonically.
I love that. My buddy Frank here, I have a blender that mixes the stereo signals to mono, so you can blend from you can blend more from channel 1 or channel 2 towards the other, or mix of both. So Frank makes all these crazy, like he's holding the GA. What is that? Is that the GA60? That's a 60-watt power amp. So I've got a bunch of demos that I'm getting caught up on Frank's stuff. Frank is a genius. So he's made all these crazy. He made one for Larry Mitchell that I think was a stereo 60-watt per side power amp. It's just like Frank's awesome. So
they must be Class D if they're that small.
They're tiny and they're great. All right, there we go. GA60 Extreme mimics all those tube amps. I love it. Thank you, Frank. Tom, there we go. Okay, Pro Reverb is the best. Gabby, virtual fist bump on that, baby. I actually think I like the Vibroverb better, but it doesn't leave the house.
He's the one that has my my Pro Reverb.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I'll have his deluxe reverb soon, so you and I will compare notes. That was a side note to Gabby there, Mason. By the way, I've already targeted. It's like, all right, so I can convince him, like, if he loans me the ES, because I got to do an ES on the steel string. He's like, Mason will probably say yes.
Yeah, no, of course. I actually don't. Surprisingly, I don't use it that much.
Especially
it's a great guitar, but I'm just, I don't know. I feel like Strats just own me.
Well, and
I don't know what to play when somebody hands me.
That's so funny.
Guitar, I don't even know what to play at this.
That's hilarious. Michael, with pleasure, especially now that I can pronounce your name. All right. Oh, there we go. Come on. There we go. Those are great. Love it. A little advertisement for the GA60 Extreme hand wired, $119.99. All right, good. And there's the AB. No, that's not the AB mix. All right. So, gosh, I think we've gotten to the end of our chat feed. So Mason, I think we're going to call it in about 14 minutes.
All
Um,
right.
but before we do that, let's take a moment and let's talk about, if somebody's gonna get this pedal and they're gonna potentially run it into something like the Cab M for speaker simulation, or they're gonna run it into an amp. So by the way, those two amps back there, I've got them both set at basically everything's at 4.
Okay.
And like normally, kind of like like 5 seems like a logical place, but I just kind of, with the new one directly behind me, I just kind of put it at 4, and it felt and sounded really good. Um, I will say that the interesting thing between that and this guy over here is what came out of the front of that guy sounded a lot more coming through direct than this one. This one sounds, there's a little bit more divergence between what I'm hearing out of the front of the amp and out of the direct out, which,
Got it.
you just get used to that. And honestly, that's one of the things and both of those are available. This one's a little bit more expensive. This one's got the Celestian. This one, I think, has an Eminence. Don't remember for sure. Uh, but this one's got the Neo, which I actually really love the sound of. But the interesting thing is kind of capturing the nuance of what an amp sounds like and sending that out of direct out. That's like $1 million trick. I mean, that's usually pretty much everybody kind of is at the 85% mark or best. That's the thing about the black one. I was like, snap! It's so close. It's
Mm.
and it's just so if you kind of begin to know what to do. But those are great little amplifiers. Mason, have you played through the Tone Masters? Have you enjoyed them at all?
I've played them only at Sweetwater. We did some demos using them, not this trip, but the previous trip. They were kind of
I
that
miss
is all. That
it.
is all I have to say.
They were kind of so oh, okay, like it's able to carry all of that. So what for me,
I think it's. I think they're. I think that they're fine. I guess I just wonder, like, the price point's not that different than the tube version of the deluxe reverb, and so I think that their price or their the marketing angle is sort of like, this is for people that want a lighter weight, solid state version of our tube equivalent. And to me, I just have this reference, right? I have all the blackface Fenders, so I have like a original 64 deluxe reverb, and so I have this really great reference. And so when I hear those, I don't think that they're bad or anything like that, but I to me, I'd rather. What do you remember? What the differentiator is between in price between the, for example, the 65 deluxe reissue versus the Tone Master version? Is it?
8.99, 9.99, and 12.99 ish, like really close right in there. And we can go over to Sweetwater, but it's pretty much that.
Yeah.
Basically, this guy is the less expensive, the 8.99 ish. You pay basically an extra $100 for the. My guess would be for the kind of the cream Tolex and the cream back Neo, which sounds great. It's interesting, because the concept. I'm enough of a quote unquote Fender purist. I was like, it's got a Celestian in it. Celestian sounds great. I actually really like the way that sounds. And then I have the 65 reissue. Um,
Right. So it looks like from what I can see, it's $300 more for the 65 reissue versus the Tone Master. Um, and I haven't played those side by side. I've only played the my amp, and then a few days later played the Tone Master. I'm pretty familiar with my amp because I play it a lot. Um, I guess that would be the more charitable test would be how does the Tone Master stack up against its tube big brother, and are they close? And then when you record, obviously there's the in the room sound, and then there's the what about when you record them? Then how
Yeah,
different are
that's
they? And so putting it through that other set of filters, maybe then it becomes less discernible.
didn't Rhett do a video of an original 65 and then the reissue?
I think of the tube ones he did, but not
Yeah,
of.
yeah. So I begged. So I am very fortunate. I have a great relationship with the Fender folks. I was like, can I do a video comparing the Tone Master and the tube one? I was like, and they were like, we would prefer you not do that. And
Yeah.
they were just kind of like, and I didn't ask why, but I was like, I was so excited about doing that video. So, but the thing is that they have. First of all, give me a moment. Give me a moment. Let me pull out the other humbucking guitar. Because I said I was going to, and I'm going to. Now, this guitar, the thing about this is it's a reissue. A lot more top end than the Les Paul. The other thing about the Les Paul and Mason, one point or another, you and I are going to geek out about strings. So, because, unfortunately, nobody wants to have the conversation with me about strings. Chef's Kitchen, Mason, are you hip to Chef's Kitchen?
Is this the one with on Netflix?
So, Chef's Kitchen it's a magazine that my wife reads. And
Okay,
they
got it.
do all these tests, and they kind of like, well, what if we do it 5 degrees?
It's like America's Test Kitchen thing.
Yeah, that's it. So,
Okay, got it.
so the thing is that, a string has acoustic properties. That is to say, it has electromagnetic properties as is interacting with an electromagnet, and it also has physical characteristics in terms of if it's a relatively doesn't want to vibrate a lot. I should say doesn't want to move a lot. It's going to interact with the pole piece a little bit differently. That is to say, if a string doesn't move as much, it's not kind of moving around in the field, the electromagnetic field of the pole piece. So all of those things make a difference. And I remember I won't mention call out the manufacturer because it was just hockey puck is what it flipping was. They were like, the metals don't make a difference on the electromagnetic output. I'm like, you're high, dude. Like I'm just, and like it was. And the thing is, I asked the question in a room full of people at one of these guitar camps. They're like, no, it doesn't make a difference. I'm just like, that's just. I mean, when we were kids, we used to play with magnets. Like certain things have more of a magnetic attraction than others. Mason, have you messed with strings at all, or because it's gonna. I mean, literally the difference in their different guitars. But the other thing about these Fender guitars, the Fender strings. First of all, generally speaking, D'Addario makes a lot of strings for everybody anyway. And it's highly probable that Fender has their actual strings made by D'Addario anyway. But these are Fender strings that they sound great on the Fender guitars. And kind of at one point I was like, what are these? Because if I break a string on these, I just want to put the same string on. Because they do sound different. I had an experience with a Metropolis amp that was here. I had a Les Paul, and I changed strings, and the guitar sounded night and day. And I called George on the phone, like, something happened to the amp, and he said, well, describe what you did. And I was like, well, I changed my strings. And he was like, numbnuts. He was just like, well, of course it sounds different. And he had a whole thing about like, it has a different electromagnetic relationship.
What was his string of choice, out of curiosity?
He was just like, if the other one sounded better, find out what it was, and don't blame my amp, douchebag. That's not what he said, but that's probably what he was thinking. He's just like, This numbnuts doesn't know that if he changes the strings, the guitar is going to sound different. Uh,
Well, to answer your question, I actually had this conversation recently with some of the guys at Sweetwater, and the consensus amongst them was Tomastic was the best, but they're really expensive.
have you played the vintagey ones that Jeff Beck and Joe Perry are playing? And I'm
I
going
don't
to
know the
forget the name of them, but that's what I put on the Les Paul.
vintage strings.
They're new vintage. They're new strings made to vintage spec. And
Reclaim
what's that?
reclaim strings.
Well, and then but they're not, they haven't been boiled yet. So
Right.
so
So
okay,
so
hang on. I need to I need to do the tell there. Most of the folks on here aren't old enough to remember the ideas that back when you couldn't just walk into a music store at any hour of the day or night and buy strings. You basically would take your strings off and boil them and get all the stuff that you don't even want to think about is on your hands off the strings so you can play them again. But Mason, tell us more about strings.
I mean, I'm looking at the Jeff Beck ones here. Sonotone.
That's it. Those are and they sound great. So anything that is going for a vintagey vibe, like I've got a '58 reissue that is now old enough to be actually vintage, and then I've got the Les Paul. That's what I put on there, and they sound great.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to admit that Diodario has been very good to me, and so I'm always sitting with a large stash of NYXLs at my disposal.
And do you
And
prefer
so that
why do you like NYXLs over XL120s and XL110s?
I actually don't have a preference for it, and let me tell you why. Because at least prior to COVID, these instruments were getting used 20 or 30 times, over the course of a week because we'd have artists coming into the showroom and guys that were at the showroom that work for Vertex would be playing the guitars and so we would just blow through strings like crazy, because you had different people playing it, different sort of acidity to their hands. So it just became a chore. In fact, I used to have a guy that would just come every week and just change all the strings, because we had like 15 guitars in the showroom, and because we were blowing through strings so fast, it was kind of like one of those things where it was like, I think the NYXL, or they told me that the NYXL would last longer than the whatever its equivalent
XL
is.
110s, one XL 120s, yeah.
So I kind of did it. Whether they sound better or worse than those or not. I kind of pulled an elixir move, where maybe it's not as good as some of its counterparts, but just knowing the abuse, it was more critical for us to have like decently fresh strings and well set up guitars there because the bass line of person was changing all the time. Sometimes it was a pro, sometimes it was me, sometimes it was, one of the other guys that works for us, Hunter or Mejia or, whoever it is. And they'd be playing these guitars and, it was just impossible to keep strings on them all the time. And so like investing in expensive stuff, I just never. I mean, I'm sure that there are better ones, but I just never went down the rabbit hole just because ignorance was bliss. With the amount of strings that we were changing every week, like our string habits, like 60 packs a month, was what we were going through. Now it's been curtailed some because we can't entertain people in the showroom in the same way, so we don't go through strings so fast. But ordinarily, we were going through a lot.
That is cool. All right, it is 8 p.m. and I've been kind of watching to see if any, kind of last minute questions were going to come in, knowing that we said, hey, we're gonna cut out at 8. Mason, first of all, always a pleasure. Without divulging any of the background stuff, Mason and I are kind of up to something in the background here. Yeah, I Mark chiming in. I would be shocked if Diodario doesn't make Fender spec strings. There's a last straggler. I think, first of all, Ernie Ball strings. One of my favorite things about them. No, it was. I think it was Ernie Ball and Darko. They used to give you an extra high E string. Like, and I love that. I thought that was such a great idea because, I was always snapping that 9. So in any case, Mason and I are going to be working on a video that I'm going to be doing around the Steel String Supreme, and that will probably come out Friday or Saturday. I have to kind of strategize with Mason what day is going to be the best for me to get some love from his
Right.
social media, such that I'm not in the way of a freight train because he's got this release. But I'm also excited to get this thing out. For those of you, it's a non-competing pedal, I think. I released the video for the Boss GT 1000 Core today, and so I was frantically editing. There's nothing like editing under a timeline, so because I really wanted to give some appropriate TLC to these demos, and so the neat thing is that I really got a chance to kind of go, oh, tomorrow I've got a good 2 hours of just kind of, and actually I've really enjoyed playing tonight. Just kind of, the whole thing. And actually, let me offer this piece of advice as we get out of here. Tom, thank you. Really appreciate it. Or I should say, you're welcome and thank you. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
this box will make you a better player. And I can say that because it's been, in the best sense of the word, kicking my little tushy here for the past couple of days. But in the same way that when I plugged in to the original amplifier, I had to play up to that piece of gear, and that is always a pleasure. I don't mind playing down to a piece of gear. How can I say this without making it sound backwards? I've got the Fender Mustangs here. I love those amps. I think for the money, I liked them so much, I bought both the Fender Mustangs. I was like, well, this one does this and this one does that. I bought both of them. I'm like an idiot. But I was like, I want them. And I got them. So the point being is they're phenomenal amplifiers. But the thing is, I don't have to raise my game to make them sound the way I want them to sound. That's not the case with this box. I was like, that little kind of plinky stuff where it's just like every little nuance. But that's why a guy like John Mayer is drawn to an amp like a Steel String Series, because all that nuance, it's like the equivalent if we went back into the 90s and you were making a record and the producer went in, and I think it was called a D4, and it was basically the drum sample box that was used on a crap ton of records, and basically it erased many a ghost note, which so basically drummers were just like, all I've got is 2 and 4, because they were really just like cat, cat, cat. The point being is that it was a thing that was synonymous with the time and all of that. This box allows us to kind of transcend decades. And that is a really powerful thing when you really think about it. Same thing I guess you could say about a Tube Screamer, because it's again a box that has been used to transcend decades. But there are very few boxes other than a Tube Screamer and maybe the Boss DD pedals that can allow you to skate through the history of guitar and really actually put on the same skates as your favorite players who span the epitome of tone. Eric Johnson, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and John Mayer. Like it would be hard to top that trio of players. So the neat thing about this is it just gives you the vehicle to be able to do that. And there's nothing wrong with playing down to an amplifier, but the ability to have an amplifier make you have to raise your game, or an amplifier in a box, is like, that's a real gift for any player. Just again, my parting advice to all of you, no matter what you're playing through, your right hand is like your lenses. And sometimes as you get older, you need a different set of lenses to see things up close than you do far away. I can see things far away just fine, but for stuff that's up close, i.e. the fine detail, I need the lenses. And that's in my analogy for the right hand. You can't just use one pick stroke if you want to be able to play a box that has this range of dynamics available to it. And I'm so excited about the challenge. And Mason, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for having the cojones to go. I'm gonna flip and do it. I know I'm gonna be like the dartboard where I'm in the middle of the target. But the thing is I can tell you, players like myself will really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
as an affirmation, the Sweetwater guys love you too. So you were saying, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to just affirm what you said, that I do think a lot of people are going to like it, and I do think along the lines of what you said. I remember Robin was Robin Ford, that is, was giving an interview or some sort of talk before a show at a meet and greet, and the thing that he said about the Dumble amplifier, I think is also, not that I'm trying to invoke that word to say that this pedal to create equivalency, but I think that in this particular sense, this part is true. He said, a Dumble amplifier, your worst note will never sound worse, but your best notes are going to sound the best that they possibly can. And I think that that's really the vibe. Like it can be revealing when you have something that is really articulate, and something that can be, that almost can magnify everything that your fingers are doing. But man, when you hit the right notes, and you're sustaining on stuff, it really does sound absolutely incredible. And I think that so far the feedback has been really awesome. And they're available now at Sweetwater, and they're kind of the exclusive for this month of October, and then starting in November they'll be released more widely. But I highly recommend that if you haven't already, you go over there and check it out. And we certainly appreciate any of your patronage and support. And if there's questions that you have, whether it's about our products or other stuff, our goal in making products is really to get people the best tone possible. And if that's not with one of our products, we're certainly happy to refer you to where we think you might be happier. So please do keep that in mind, that ultimately we want to help you, and hopefully one of our products can fit that bill, but sometimes they don't. And we want to be able to recommend to you something that's going to work for you.
Like a vintage Pro Reverb. All
Yeah.
right, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. Really, what a pleasure. Like I said, Mason and I are kind of up to some shenanigans.
Yeah,
Um,
this was my audition.
what's that?
This was my audition.
This was your audition, and that's all we can say. But it's good. We're gonna have some fun, and thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. Mason, thanks again for making time,
Pleasure.
and for making the pedal. It's just great.
Night.
Good night, everybody. Cheers.